Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, I am going to be talking about MTG Arena, and more specifically, its future. So, why don't we start by looking at what's happened in the past? 'Cause that's a really good way to guess what's going to happen in the future, is by saying, hey, this is what happened last year at this time, what is going to happen this year? So what I did is I made this little compilation of just everything that happened in 2019 and everything we know happened in 2020, and then I added on a couple things that I think are my predictions, or that I know are my predictions, and I'm going to be going over those with you, why I think what I think, and all of that. So, first, why don't we just take a look at 2019. So looking at just 2019, we can kind of look at the start of the year. So in January, we had duplicate protection added, best of 3 ranked, and Ravnica Allegiance. Now, again, we had a set release, not that much. But then in February, we had a very small update. March, we had the first cosmetics. April, we had War of the Spark. May, we had events. June, we had a set. July, we had events. August, we had events. September, we had a set. October, we had events and the launch of Brawl. November, we had a Friends List, Historic launched, and Historic Anthology 1. So November was a pretty big month. And then December was events. So looking at that, how much content was actually added? And looking at that addition, you might say, oh, the MTG Arena team is kind of slowing down. This isn't that great. But if we take a look now at 2020, we have January, we had Theros Beyond Death, the Epic Game Store release. I mean, we had some small things like the first and new tag, but we also had Brawlers Guild Hall, which wasn't that great, and we kind of had this roadmap that was given to us. So looking at the new features, it's just Theros Beyond Death, but it doesn't look better even when you look at February, because February, it's just events. But looking into March and April, we see something pretty cool. So we have Historic Anthology 2, direct messaging, new tutorial, and the first cube, which some people would say those are some of the most major features we've ever gotten in MTG Arena. And so, oh wow, that's really big. They can't follow that up with anything better. In April, they added Ikoria and player drafting, one of the most requested features in MTG Arena ever. Now, here is where what we know has happened is over. May, June, July, August, all the months coming up ahead, there's a lot they've told us is coming this year, and I may have ended up missing something, but I kind of compiled, statements here and there, and I took the roadmap, and I kind of just placed it on the calendar to say, hey, where could this fall? Because by showing you it visually, you might be like, well, I thought this was going to come out then, but it doesn't really make sense with how they normally do Historic Anthology. Now, looking at Historic Anthology, if we compare it to previous things, normally what they do is they go set. So in September of 2019, they did Throne of Eldraine. Then the next month, they do a festival. Then the month after that, they do Historic Anthology. But because Core Set 2021 is so close to Ikoria, we already have confirmed that Historic Anthology 3 is coming out in late May. And I would be surprised if they don't do a festival, saying that they're adding a way for us to get showcase styles in the next update. So those two are pretty much guaranteed. But you'll notice here that in yellow, by the way, in the upper right, there was a key on the big one, but basically yellow means event. But you see first cube draft. I think that with the launch of player drafting in April, that was kind of their test. And then in May, they're going to do a cube draft, or at least they're going to announce a cube draft. So next month, I don't expect it to be a huge update. Of course, if you're a historic player, it's going to be nice to be able to play historic ranked. You'll have a bunch of new cards added. So pretty cool. But then we get into June, and June we see Core Set 2021 release, which, by the way, if you look at that is 3 sets in a row where sets are released. By the way, blue is sets, and I'm counting Historic Anthology as a set. Then we also have the 64-bit client, because they said it'll be launched around June, and I'm going to assume that because, there's been no signs of delay, I'm going to assume that's going to stay there. And then player challenges, this one is more of a wild card. This one, they said that in the road ahead kind of, they said we're doing this thing called player challenges where the entry fee will support the prize pool and it will reward things that are better than coins, gems, and packs, which makes me think it's either real money, real packs, something along those lines. And they said they're speeding through the process because of the outbreak, And I think that if June gives them, just enough time. If it's just an event, I know there's like a lot of stuff. If it's more than just like gems and coins and stuff, there's probably a lot to set up there, but I think it could be very interesting to see. I don't know if this is more like competitiveness, like pro points. I'm not sure, but I think that that'll be happening in June if they're trying to speed up development of it. Then in July, we have Jumpstart, which we have. Well, by the way, I predicted that it was going to be coming out in July, and then we got this article that came out and basically said, yep, Jumpstart's coming to Arena in July, so, hey, I was right there, but then we have another wildcard. Here's macOS, a macOS version. Now, a macOS version cannot happen before a 64-bit client, and I think this is a little optimistic, but I think that it is completely possible. I think that they're going to want to launch macOS alongside a set, not alongside a historic anthology, which I feel like Jumpstart's a pretty decent set. I don't know how it's going to work in MTG Arena, but I can't imagine them waiting till October to release it, especially with the 64 client at this point in my roadmap already being done. It seems they've been working on it, and they even have partners that are helping them with this, so I'd be very surprised if that was delayed. And then on top of that, there'll be festivals for Core Set 2021, which, by the way, you'll notice that these months are a lot more full than the previous year. Like, a lot of them are just like events. This is a set of cards, and actually, if you look ahead, I have a set of cards coming out every month for the rest of the year. Actually, there's a set of cards coming out, if you look at the entire year, every month except for February. But then we move on to August, and I just have Historic Anthology 4. I'm going to assume there's going to be some other feature here, and macOS, a macOS version could totally come out in August, but I would assume when you add a surge of players, you probably want them to be able to play something, so, we'll see. Now, I actually, the gap between Core Set 2021 and Zendikar Rising is the biggest gap, and so placing Historic Anthology 4 here, I think makes a lot of sense, and then having Amonkhet come out the next month, because we know it's coming by the end of the year, makes even more sense. Now, you might say, hey, you might want to do Amonkhet first, but I think, because Historic Anthology 4 always marks the start of a historic season, and honestly, looking at this, I could totally see them swapping Jumpstart and Historic Anthology. Why? Because, hey, we're going to release Jumpstart, but then we're not going to have ranked historic, where this is going to add a bunch of cards to historic. So I think it actually might end up making more sense to put Historic Anthology 4 in July and then Jumpstart in August, which means that you'll have about 3 months of straight historic content, which I think might be a little optimistic on my part, but I think that is generally what they are going to do. So, I Jumpstart and Historic Anthology 4 interchangeable. They could just release Jumpstart and say, hey, also historic ranked is a thing, but also then they're not giving Core Set 2021 a lot of time to bake, but then again, it is a core, so it's set, so maybe that's why they're allowing this to happen. Then, of course, in September, I'm talking about the Amonkhet remaster and the MTG Arena anniversary. I'm not sure if they're going to do anything about that, but it will be a full year since Arena has launched out of beta. So, since its full release, it will have been a year. Then in October, here's where we get some of our really cool stuff. We have Zendikar Rising, which, by the way, that is also a speculative guess. For all I know, Zendikar Rising is coming at the end of September, and actually, that might make a little bit more sense because if it launches, Core Set 2021 launches really early July, and so it actually comes in the June update. But for some reason, I just have a feeling that they're planning on Zendikar Rising being delayed, especially due to the outbreak and all that. I feel like October is probably a safe bet. It'll probably be earlier October, though. And then we have Rotation and Renewal. So this happened last year where we had a Renewal, which I don't know why that's not on the previous year list. Maybe it's something I didn't consider to be significant, or they didn't talk about it in the Road Ahead, because that's what these are based, or not Road Ahead, State of the Game. These are what those are based on. But yeah, I think that Rotation Renewal, they're going to give us some more rewards saying, hey, everything's rotating. And then I think the mobile release is going to happen alongside Zendikar Rising. They said it's happening this year, and there is no other time that makes sense. Ready? Here's why. You don't want to do a mobile release anytime before Zendikar Rising, because you don't want a bunch of people to be like, ooh, a bunch of new cards. Oh, they just rotated out. So you really don't want a surge of new players to happen right before rotation. You want it to happen with the release of the new set. Why? Because, oh, everyone's hyped around this new set. You're seeing all this advertisement for it. Oh, also MTG Arena, you can now play that on your mobile device. I'm going to go play that game. And then players get to wait an entire year until rotation happens, in which case they either are going to leave the game or stay as a permanent player of the game, pretty much. Versus if you were to release mobile in August or September, then hey, half the cards you have are now about to rotate out. That's not that great. So I think a mobile release is going to happen in October. They're going to align it with the Zendikar Rising release. And yes. Then in November, we have a Historic Anthology 5. This one is pressed up closer to Zendikar Rising than most of them. By the way, another set is most likely coming out January 2021, so keep that in mind when I'm placing things. And so I also said festivals, obviously, and they said there's going to be a Playblade rework, which I think is going to happen in November, but I also think Friend deck sharing is going to happen in November, so generally that's a lot of different things happening in November. And then December, here's kind of my wild card, Pioneer Masters. Now, it is completely possible that November is kind of just a dud month, for the fact that first off, if we look at November last year, it looks pretty good. We had the Friends list, we got Historic Launch, Historic Anthology 1, and performance changes, but also Historic Anthology 1 is there because technically Throne of Eldraine launched in September, even though the actual set launched in October. So again, if Zendikar Rising gets knocked back one, this whole list kind of goes out of proportion, and honestly, here's my prediction. So December, I would really love to see a Pioneer Masters. They announced it, but that does not mean it's coming this year. If Pioneer Masters is not in December, I think it will actually be pushed to next year. Then they're going to have Zendikar Rising in September, Historic Anthology in November, and then Amonkhet in December. So that's kind of like my secondary prediction, but I honestly think this list is pretty strong comparing it to last year's list. It definitely looks a lot more full. Obviously, I don't have all the details of our update coming out in the future, but these are kind of just some of the things they've talked about and where I think they could fall in terms of a release date. Of course, anything is bound to change. They said Amonkhet's coming this year, but maybe it's not. So that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think and what features you're most excited for. Let me know what you think should be changed on my list in the comments down below. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.